I'm Lin-Manuel Miranda, and you're listening to Hard NOC Life.
Well, it's the NOC in full color, you see me? The Hard NOC Life, comics, movies, and TV, yeah. Pop culture.
Welcome to Hard NOC Life. I'm Keith Chow.
I'm Britney Monet.
I'm Dominic Ma.
Hey guys, thank you for holding it down last week, and thank you for working on your birthday, Dominic.
Oh, yeah. Well, my birthday, what better thing to do than discuss Marvel stuff with Britney?
Yes, it was fun.
I took your birthday off, is what I'm saying.
Many people do. I mean, that's the thing about having a birthday on July 4th. It's not a hard thing, it's not a problem, but it's like as simple as like you make a plan to like get together with some of your friends in the bar, and guess what? Everyone has something else to do. That's just the function of July 4th. So, but something's always happening. It's just not, your specific birthday thing happening.
How you doing, Brittany?
I'm doing good. I worked an opening shift this morning, so I've been awake for a while. Can't wait to take a nap.
Well, we'll make it quick so you can take a nap because
I feel like I had some matcha and some blonde espresso at work today, so it should get me through this podcast.
Well, we're just swimming in MCU content, though, right? Like that's why
Right.
we had to convene. I mean, we have an actual Marvel movie to talk about, as well as the penultimate episode of Loki. But let's start with a movie that should have come out a year ago, but here we are 16 months later watching Widow. Widow made $80 million at the box office, but according to Disney, they made $60 million extra dollars streaming it on Disney Plus, which is, I think, the first time.
$70 million in the global box office or international box office, so it made like $220 million or something like that.
Yeah, definitely the biggest pandemic opening. It's the first time I think Disney's ever released financial numbers for their streaming service, because I don't think Mulan or Raya got a box office quote-unquote receipt for it. Maybe because they didn't make that much money, but $60 million in streams, as well as $80 million at the box office domestically, $70 million globally. Huge movie, Black Widow. This movie should have come out 10 years ago. Literally should have come out 5 years ago.
The storyline
depending
5
on when
years
it's
ago.
set. Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. You mean because they would have fit it between Civil War and Infinity War?
That's right.
Right.
And, I made the joke when I watched it. I saw a screener a couple weeks ago, and I tweeted out, and I think I shared with you, Dominic. If you always wanted to know the origin story of her Infinity War vest, Black Widow is the movie for you.
Oh my gosh.
I did gather there's a lot of jokes about that vest. Just watching the Florence Pugh highlights on YouTube.
2.5 hours of why Natasha shows up with blonde hair and a green vest in Infinity War. That's the whole purpose of this movie.
Right. And again, I haven't seen it yet, but go ahead and talk about it. Go ahead and
We're going to spoil
everything.
the hell up. So this is your spoiler warning, Dominic, as well as those of you listening who have not seen Black Widow and don't plan on seeing Black Widow anytime soon. If you do want to follow the conversation, hit pause, give Disney $30, stream it on Disney Plus, or venture out to your local AMC and then come back and hit resume.
Or you can do what I did with my family is, yes, the Disney Plus account is under my card, but they all Venmo'd me $7.50 each. So, I really didn't have to pay that much for it technically. So that I know, because I was the person who's like, I'm not going to watch it, not going to pay for it. I don't want to give Scarlett Johansson any of my money. But I'm one of those people who I felt very left out of the conversation. I was trying to tell you before we started recording, at work where you have to wear these headsets through drive-through to talk to people, and there's always one less. So anytime I don't have a headset and they're all having great conversations, I'm like, I'm left out. I want a headset. So that's how I felt when I saw everyone tweeting the other night. I'm like, I want to watch this now. I feel very left out. So that's why I watched it and caved. As you know, Florence Pugh always understands the assignment. That was my review of the movie, was she always understands the assignment.
I'm the one who still really likes Scarlett Johansson, so we can fight about that if you want. I like her because she was in Ghost World, and that movie is fabulous.
It's more of as a person that I don't like her than I don't think she's a terrible actress. That's something that I feel like I should make clear. Just her as a person just bothers me so much, where I just don't want to
But I get that she's weird and she says things awkwardly, but she was a child star. Like, all child stars grow up to be weird adults. There's that.
It's not even weird. She very obviously supports Woody Allen, which is not okay.
To be fair, you've been hyping Midnight in Paris for a couple weeks too, which is also a Woody Allen movie.
I forgot that it's a Woody Allen movie, but I do like that movie. I haven't really seen much of his other movies. I don't know. She just doesn't want to say, like, you know, he's done terrible things. Like, he's done terrible things. Like, I'm not going to lie. Yeah, I love Midnight in Paris, but still.
Tom Hiddleston. Well, we'll get to the Tom Hiddleston part of it all.
Yeah.
I will say that before we turn this into, like, Scarlett Johansson Sucks podcast, I'm not a huge fan. I'm indifferent to Scarlett Johansson despite all of her, you know, wanting to play a tree and Japanese people and everything like that. I'm honestly indifferent to her. I will say, I feel like the filmmakers of Black Widow are trolling me specifically because there are scenes at the beginning of the movie which show a young Natasha Romanoff, and the actress playing her is Mila Jovovich's daughter.
Really?
Oh, I thought she looked familiar too. I'm like, I know this little girl from somewhere. It's because
I've been saying since 2010 Mila Jovovich should have been playing Black Widow since Iron Man 2, because I feel like she looks like Black Widow. She's actually Russian, and just the fact that they cast basically a clone of Mila Jovovich to play young Natasha is trolling me specifically, because Mila Jovovich should have been Natasha all along. Just age-wise, she fits in better with the rest of the cast than Scarlett Johansson. Because as this movie makes clear, Scarlett Johansson was negative 4 years old during the Cold War, so whatever.
Yes, they are hearing your fan cast suggestions as always, Keith. But really, the Mila Jovovich, was she in the action movies at the time?
I mean, Resident Evil. She's been doing those movies. I mean, there are several Resident Evil gifs alone that look like a Black Widow movie. And, you know, people have varying opinions of Jovovich as an actress. I think she would have nailed it as Black Widow, though. I just think she's got the natural action movie star quality. And again, just age-wise, I think she makes more sense as Natasha Romanoff than Scarlett Johansson does.
There's always the chance she'll be the variant.
I dropped that fan cast years ago until they cast Jovovich's actual daughter as young Natasha. So I was like, crap. They must have been listening to me, and this is their way of...
That's funny. No, because it was weird watching the movie. I was like, I know this little girl from somewhere, but I don't know where. Yeah. And I'm like, and I didn't look her up, so to hear that she's like Mila's daughter makes so much sense, because I used to watch the first Resident Evil, like, all the time. So...
Yeah, I mean, truth be told, full disclosure, cards on the table, I'm a Mila stan, totally. Like, she was probably one of my first celebrity crushes as a kid, because she did like a Clearasil commercial when I was like 12 years old, and I've loved her since then.
Wow, that's awesome.
Plus,
from the not from a movie, but from a Clearasil commercial. And then she did Blue Lagoon, and then of course, you know, Fifth Element. So I've been a huge Mila stan for a very long time. I mean, I'm such a fan of hers. I bought her album that came out in the early 90s when she was like a recording artist. Golly. That's fascinating.
Anyway.
Well, you're deeply all about Mila Jovovich. I didn't realize
I'm a huge Mila fan. Don't actually like the Resident Evil movies, but whatever.
I listened to Scarlett Johansson's Tom Waits covers when she had the brief period when she was a singer, but I didn't buy her album, so I don't think I'm saying I'm not as much of a stan of Scarlett Johansson as you are of Mila Jovovich.
Shout out to the Divine Comedy. Go look that up.
Okay.
That's her album. That was the album that The Gentleman Who Fell. That was the single that came out in 94.
Mila Jovovich will be the next MJ when we retire MJ from... Anyway, sorry, we're diverging. What did you guys think of Black Widow? I'm the guy who likes having my friends spoil movies to me in conversation.
Well, here's a huge spoil. She doesn't die at the end. Or she does, actually. Post-credits, she is dead at the end of the movie. Because the post-credits take place past Endgame.
Yeah, I think it was really a decent movie. I agree with everyone saying that we should have got a Black Widow movie sooner. However, I just don't know how good it would have been if we got it sooner, to be honest. I really like this, though. It was really good. And this is coming from someone who's very, like, I don't really care for Scarlett Johansson. But it's more of a person, because I loved her in Jojo Rabbit, and I'm so mad what happened to her character in Jojo Rabbit.
Well, to that point, I'm still mad what they did to Natasha in Endgame, right? Like, to me, it was a fine movie. Like, it's nothing to write home about. It's not the best MCU movie. It's not the worst MCU movie. It's fine. It's, to me, in the middle. Like, there's, 25 of them? It's smack dab in the middle of, like, it's number 16 or whatever, right?
Well,
That said...
that far down the list.
Whatever. I'm indifferent. I'm absolutely indifferent about Black Widow. But what pisses me off, though, I mean, that's harsh, because, again, I'm indifferent. Why would I be pissed off if I was different? But the thing that I don't understand, let's say, about, and I've said this even before seeing the movie, and it doesn't change my opinion post-watching the movie, is I don't understand the strategy of putting this movie out now, right? Or if now was 2020. Like, the fact that this is the kickoff to Phase 4 just puzzles me to no end, because I just don't get it. What does this movie set up for Phase 4?
Well, see, I know that every actor who did the first Avenger movie, or the main core cast, they all signed a contract saying that they would do, like, 6 movies, and then, like, for the other 2, Hawkeye and Black Widow, they would get their own solo movie, but they would have, like, 6 other film appearances. So that's the contract they signed. Yes. But
narratively, it makes no sense.
Narratively, no. But a lot of people don't realize that there was actually another studio that had the live action rights to Black Widow. So she was just like Hulk being linked to Marvel to use. And like how, as we know, Spider-Man is being linked to Marvel to use. It's that same type of thing. And they finally got her rights back when, like, I think it was like 2016, 2017, when it was already like in, like, you know.
So like Hulk and Spider-Man, she was in that gray area for a while, and maybe it just reverted? Or...
Yeah, and then also the guy who used to own Disney was very much against doing too many projects that were...
Oh, I think
like,
that was the Mike Perlmutter, right? Not the Marvel guy. Right, that's what I'm saying. Like, behind the scenes business stuff, whatever. Like, that's fine.
That's what affected it, I want to say, at least in terms of release, so people understand why. And then I think it was just, there was still that set of fans who were like, oh, where's the Black Widow movie? So... Well,
yeah, again, business-wise, whatever. Narratively, what I'm saying is that what baffles me is the decision to kill her off regardless, right? Like, and going back to Endgame. So what this movie does set up, and what I liked about it was Florence Pugh, David Harbour, and Rachel Weisz. Like, I think they're amazing. And I want to see more of them. Excellent. Like, I want to see the Russian family more, you know? Like, I would totally be down for a Red Guardian movie. I would totally be down for, like, you know, seeing the Americans through them, right? Like, because that's what the first 20 minutes of this movie is. It's the Americans, the FX show. Because they're basically undercover KGB agents living in America in the 80s and 90s. All that said, again, what baffles me about the decisions... This actually, what I'm more upset about is Endgame than Black Widow. What this movie sets up just totally makes the story decision, again, not the contracts and the business or whatever, the story decisions to kill her and not Hawkeye make zero sense to me after establishing the family that she has, the Red Guardian and Melina and Yelena. Like, the way they end, like, she kind of comes to terms with them and you know, they kind of go their separate ways at the end of the movie as kind of like, this is her found family as much as the Avengers are, you know? Yeah. And then so, like, throughout the Avengers, for her to be like, I have no family. Like, she does. Like, they become a family at the end of this movie.
Yeah. That was, I think, a little, like, you know, plot hole thing going back. I don't know. Everyone keeps saying, like, oh, I wish they didn't kill her. But honestly, I was just so over her that I didn't care. And then what made it worse is they had to put the two, like, characters that I cared the least for. Sure. In this moment. Like, I really didn't care either way who made it out. Honestly, if they had both somehow fell off the cliff and died, I would have been fine. But I mean, again, you know,
take whatever like real life issues. I'm just saying in universe narrative, it just makes no sense, especially because, like, she's like, Hawkeye actually has a family. Yeah, but Hawkeye was also a brutal murderer for like 5 years. Yeah, he doesn't deserve redemption. He killed a bunch of Latin people and Asian people for 5 years. Like, Ronan was a racist, as far as I'm concerned. Let him jump off the cliff. And
you know what I'm saying? And there's people like who like to make the argument, like, well, he was killing people who were technically bad. And I'm like, okay, but why didn't they throw in the KK there to make it be like he's going after everybody who's bad? bad, not just like the people of color who are bad. Like it looks bad. You know,
I mean,
like-
the only redeeming quality of keeping Hawkeye alive in Endgame is that we're getting Kate Bishop in the Hawkeye series, later this year. That's all. Fine, okay. He had to stay alive to bring Kate Bishop in. Great, but again, I just feel like, if you were to go Endgame and then Black Widow, I don't know. It doesn't, to me, feel like resolution. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's like, what is it that when you watch Star Wars in like the machete order or whatever, it's like, okay, now you watch 1, 2, 3, and then you watch 4, 5, or whatever. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's like if you were to watch Black Widow, I mean, if you were to watch it chronologically, you watch Black Widow after Civil War, right?
Yeah.
Same thing with Black Panther. I don't know, for some reason, like all their movies take place post Civil War for whatever reasons. Like Black Panther is another one that actually takes place between Civil War and Infinity War. They love that like 2016, 2017 time period. But I don't know. It's almost like it's more of an epilogue for Phase 3 than a kickoff to Phase 4. Especially when you think of like the TV series as the main Phase 4 jumping off point. All the TV series have like except for Falcon Winter Soldier, I guess, but they all have like a weird cosmic multiversal thing going on. And then like Falcon Winter Soldier and Black Widow are kind of the outliers in that. I don't know. It's fine.
No, I mean, you're right. I mean, but it sounds like kind of what you're saying is they did an effective job of showing us their story, which we hadn't really known before, and so it throws you off when you're you're sort of wanting a little bit more of that. But also, I think she was probably sick of playing the character.
That's probably what it is too.
Yeah.
She probably was like, "Let me do this solo movie so people can say they got their Black Widow movie," which it really genuinely is a really good movie. I really liked it a lot. I don't know how high up it's on my list, but it is definitely higher up than like Iron Man 2 and Thor Dark World.
Yeah. I mean, it's in the middle, right? It's like I said, it's neither great nor terrible. It's not the worst MCU movie. It's not the best MCU movie.
Florence really carries the movie more than anybody, though. But I think Florence is just an amazing actress. She's one of my favorite actresses.
She does seem wonderful.
One thing I do want to dig into, and I know you tweeted about this, Brittany, a little bit, but one of the big mysteries going into Black Widow is who is Taskmaster? Who is Taskmaster, right? And there was a huge kind of like, speculation. Taskmaster must be this, Taskmaster must be that. And apparently, all of a sudden, these Taskmaster stands came out of the woodwork like, this Taskmaster is the best, Marvel villain ever. Like, motherfucking nobody knows who Taskmaster. No one cares about Taskmaster. Anyway, so
he's a bit overused.
It's revealed that Taskmaster is actually Dreykov's daughter, the character that represents the red in Black Widow's ledger. Apparently, I had forgotten about this. I watched.
Are you serious?
An Easter egg video where Loki mentions Dreykov's daughter in the Avengers.
What?
I was like,
how did you forget? That's like one of my favorite lines when he says it's Dreykov's daughter.
Yeah, it meant nothing to me.
I always misinterpreted that line as she was Dreykov's daughter for some reason. The way he delivers the line, like insulting her, like, "Oh, this is you," like. Come from this dad who's like horrible and did all these horrible things. Like, how can you erase that? But
wait, Taskmaster is a woman? I mean, this is fascinating. Okay,
yes,
like Seamus and Metroid. Sorry, video game reference. I know you don't care.
People kind of guess that though, just from the trailers, because the way she moves, even in the trailers, there's definitely. I remember someone, took the Taskmaster action figure and was like, "Look, there's some feminine curves here." So like, I think the fact that it was a woman wasn't that surprising just because of some of the speculation. But I will say that like the discourse around it, like when the movie came out, Taskmaster was the #1 trending topic on Twitter for a while. And I don't know, I just feel like so much of it is because it's confirmed to be a woman, like all of a sudden this is the worst character ever.
For me, I didn't like, it's not so much that I think the gender bent idea is really cool. I'm never like super against like gender bending or race bending characters, as long as it, isn't going to completely ruin the story. Like if Taskmaster was like, misogynistic, then I would have been like, okay, this ruins his character. Like, what are you doing? But in this case, I think it's just, it felt, I don't know, like, it felt like just something for us to feel, like us to feel even more sorry. Like, I feel like they were trying to add more stuff for us to feel like empathy towards Natasha, because I think Marvel is very, if you saw some of the press tour, like they're very not happy with Scarlett with some of the things she was saying. You could see the cast and crew and even Feige's reactions to her answers to questions. So I feel like this was very much like a, let's try to make people feel as much sympathy for Natasha as we can, and that's what it felt like.
I don't.
Like,
I mean, it was the reveal itself was fine. Like I wasn't as offended by like 90% of the internet is apparently that Dreykov's daughter is like again Taskmaster. Maybe it's because that character holds no special place in my heart. Like, I don't give a shit. But I just find it ridiculous that so much of the discourse on the internet post the movie coming out is that, you know, this is such a bastardization of Taskmaster. I'm like, motherfucker, again, who cares about Taskmaster?
Oh,
I
no,
don't know.
there are so many trolls who will just look on, like, any opportunity to like, hate on women or hate on any kind of gender bent casting just to show their, you know, show their cred as trolls.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
I really feel like it's different. I don't know, at least for me.
Well, I don't think
I don't like...
I'm not talking about you, Brittany, but like a lot of the, if you just click on the trending topic, like 90% of it is dudes pissed that it's a woman. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, but I feel like the reveal is I feel like the way they handled the character within the story and the contents of trying to, I feel like, make you feel more sympathy towards Natasha is what ruins, I think, the Taskmaster being a woman or Dreykov's daughter versus, like, you know, just, for at least for me, it felt very like, this does nothing for me. And I feel like it was trying to do something for you in the sense of feeling more something towards Natasha or whatever. And I was just like, all right, I guess that's what they did with the Taskmaster. And I'm like, okay, well, who's going to train Spider-Woman when she shows up in the MCU? Because that's who trained her.
Whoa.
Okay.
Yeah.
You know?
Okay, maybe again, this is me not being like, you know, Super Marvel guy. So like, maybe I'm less offended because I'm not Super Marvel guy. So like, I will take that.
I remember that comic. In the comic storyline, he's a SHIELD agent who is deeply, you know, ingrained in their system. Or Hydra, SHIELD, you know how they overlap.
Yeah.
Sorry, but okay, but he's in the system and he's responsible for training people. He's definitely a dude, very very like classic like Joel Sargent kind of dude.
I would have been fine with that character being female, but now I'm just like, well, there goes the person who was supposed to be Spider-Woman's trainer when she was in Hydra. So
they'll figure out somebody else to do that part of it.
Yeah.
But
I mean, maybe they'll say Spider-Woman Jessica was one of the widows that were in the Red Room.
No, I hate that already.
No, that's
Because, you know, they are Spider Women.
much.
I mean, they're Black Widows.
They're in the same category of web associated people, but no, we can't. There's a specific border between the Spider world and Black Widow, and in the comics. I'm just saying that, even though she has the Spider name, there's a line that we can't cross there.
The other thing I'll say about yes, Florence Pugh is great. She brings a lot to it as Yelena, and you can kind of see like she will be the Widow replacement in the future as the, you know, she's going to be the breakout. In fact, the post-credit scene sets her up to be, you know, at least important in future waves.
Yeah, she's going to be in a
MCU.
Hawkeye show, basically.
You're right. And Elaine shows up. What's her name? Julie Louis-Dreyfus.
Yes.
Contessa, whatever the.
Yeah,
LaFontaine.
Yeah.
This was supposed to be her debut in the MCU, but of course, because of the delay, she shows up in Falcon Winter Soldier first. But this is the connection there. So now we see that U.S. Agent and Yelena Belova are part of her team, whatever her team is. And, you know, people are speculating maybe they're the Thunderbolts, maybe they're the Dark Avengers, maybe they're, you know, some sort of covert team being formed. And that's cool. Again, David Harbour's cool. Rachel Weisz is cool. And it's fine. It does fall into the trap of early phase Marvel movies where, like, the last act of the movie is shit falling out of the sky and CG explosions everywhere, which is a little, you know, tiresome at this point. Yeah, it's fine. Again, it's fine. I didn't hate it, didn't love it.
I liked it more than I thought I would. Like I said, I think it's because Florence really, for me, carries the movie. She's amazing. And also, so I don't know if you guys noticed, the little girl who plays young Yelena is, I think her name is Violet McGraw, who she was one of the twins on The Haunting of Hill House, and her brother is played by, I think, Billy on WandaVision. So, yeah, shout out to my little Hill House kids who are, you know, getting cast. I love Haunting of Hill House. So, like, I'm so proud to see the little twins doing stuff. They're so adorable on Hill House.
did not know any of that. Okay, so here's my question. Did you all watch it at home with the Premiere Access
I
thing?
did, yes.
Oh, you had a screener, right, Keith?
Yeah, I saw a screener.
Yeah, so I did, and like I said, my family wanted to watch it, so we like divided it like by 4, and they all like Venmo me the money for it, and yeah, so
Okay.
that's how we did it.
I did not manage to do that because I had a technical problem with my freaking password or whatever, and for various reasons, I like my password and I want to change it. So it's like, if you're not gonna recognize my password, I'm not gonna order the freaking Black Widow movie, even though I like, you know, conceded like okay because I want to watch it. But if I could pivot it for a minute, like I think this is an interesting moment because it's coming out in theaters and available on streaming. All right, so we're still in this weird area where things are slightly opening up, and the next bunch of movies I think are scheduled to be only in theaters, quote unquote.
Yes, assuming so.
With
Are you talking about
Shang-Chi
in the
and-
MCU?
yeah, I mean, yeah, and I'm speaking of like the MCU is kind of like an, you know, the industry leader in the movie area right now. I mean, like as they go, so does the movie industry goes. Something. So when they came out with that long trailer that was very much hyping the only in theaters thing, you know, that's to me like I was a little bit upset with that because of the pandemic thing, because of you know, because pandemics can resurge and stuff, and I'm still on the team of big movie theaters are on their way out, and this whole like having to open only theaters thing is kind of ridiculous because they've made a model which can work to bring movies right to your home. And you know, like if basically I'm saying like if a pandemic resurges and then people are like, well, we needed movie theaters to make money, so we started putting movies only in theaters again, like that's fucking stupid, dude.
Yeah, I think people have always had issues with theaters before because of prices.
Yeah, there's that too.
People would complain like, oh, people only go out and see like, you know, the big blockbuster movies. Like, well, people are going to go see the movies that more people are going to be talking about, first of all. And blockbuster movies are the only movies that get an actual like a nationwide release. Like some people don't realize that a lot of like the smaller films are only released in the big cities, and not everyone has access to get to the big cities. So that's why blockbuster movies do better than that like little indie movie that you really like. Like that's the truth that I think people need to realize, and people within the industry. So yeah, it is, if people can watch, you know, whatever movies they want from home and pay for it, like people are going to do that. I don't like it, especially when you can cook at home. Like, it saves people money.
Yeah.
That made a difference for the Oscar movies, I feel like, this year. Like Nomadland and Minari, Promising Young Woman. Like, because of streaming, those more people probably saw those movies. Like, right when the Oscar season was happening than any, like, Oscar season film before, right? Like, I don't think... Because to Brittany's point, especially those Oscar movies, like those art films, those indie films that get all of the awards, play the big cities, they play the art house theaters, and you know,
and
a movie like Minari was watched by folks who have access to, you know, the internet.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, Warner Brothers got in trouble earlier this year when they announced they're doing the dual theaters and streaming, but you know, it worked for most of the films they've been doing it so far. Like Conjuring did well, Godzilla, Kong did well, right? Like, it's just, I think to your point, it's about what is the big blockbuster, it's horror movies get people, you know, excited.
Yeah, those will always
genre films get people excited, comic book movies. So I think there's a case can be made, and I'll talk more about this in Nerd Poppin', that films that are theater only may or may not do well. And I think your concern, Dom, is going to be doubled only because the next two Marvel, if we're just bringing back to Marvel, the next two Marvel movies are the two Asian American ones. So
yeah,
if they are theater only and then COVID comes back and people don't go see them in theaters, what does that say about like the box office resilience of Simu Liu and Gemma Chan, you know?
Yeah.
I mean, it's kind of a trap, and it's an artificial one, because I think the dual model is a good idea. It's a good transitional model to have it available at home and in theaters if you want to go see it in theaters. And just to be clear, I'm not like against movie theaters. Like, you know, indie art house theaters, movie theaters, like where people actually like to work in them, those are cool. Every city should have one. I'm not into this idea like the movie industry doesn't need saving because it's not one of those industries that you got to save because people like or invested in their jobs. Okay, it's not for creating jobs. It's for the this outdated model of making $1 billion in box office. And I think that for a while there, Disney and HBO Max both were being forward looking towards bringing the model home. And I think I'm just very curious what this pressure is to get back to theaters only, as if it matters for a blockbuster movie. Of course, the dynamics are different for indie movies, but I mean, only in theaters is a very questionable phrase to me.
I mean, I think the thing about the blockbuster movies is that they're so expensive, right? And then the best way to recoup those funds is to make $1 billion. And I think the problem, what you're getting at, is in terms of like the movie industry, is less theaters, and it's just like these ballooning budgets. Like, do these movies need to cost $250 million to make? Like, I've always argued you could make an excellent Batman movie for $60 million. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, Zack Snyder didn't need $300 million to make a Justice League movie.
Yeah,
right? Like,
but now, they want to pay actors a certain amount of money to wedge them into contracts. That's part of it, is you want to... And I know Kevin Feige recently came out with that he's not going to have as restrictive contracts as he used to, which I think is great. But that's part of the reason. It's
one's going... Yeah, right. Sorry, go ahead.
And that also includes, I think, in your check also includes when you come back in every film, whether it is a big blockbuster movie or an indie movie, does reshoots and additional filming. It gets on my nerves when people this movie's in chaos because this is happening. And it's like, no, this is a recurring thing that happens in the industry. Like, every movie has time at the end of their contracts. Like, oh, you got to be available between this time because this is when we're shooting our additional filming and reshoots and ADR and all that. Like, there's lots of stuff. Like, I don't know. That's one thing that bothers me.
I mean, part of me is I am excited to see a movie in a theater again. Like, yeah, I think there's something about the experience to be in a communal setting. Like, part of that trailer you were talking about is the scene from Endgame when the crowd is going crazy. And there's something that's missing when you watch it on your big screen TV. Like, I prefer watching at home sometimes, but there are some films that I want to be surrounded by people, surrounded by friends, and like hoot and holler with a big ass tub of popcorn in front of me.
I agree.
Sure.
And to be fair, like, I want to do that for a Marvel movie and not necessarily like an indie. Like, an indie movie, I don't need to be surrounded by people hooting and hollering. Like, an indie movie I can watch at home. Again, that's why I think, like, watching Nomadland, although Nomadland would be amazing on a big screen.
Right. No, sure. The last two beautiful communal experiences I had in the movie theater were definitely in Endgame and Black Panther. And yes, so and they were wonderful. And yes, it can only happen in that crowd setting.
It would have been Birds of Prey if there were more than 3 people in the theater when I saw it.
Right, yeah. But for something like that, like, although I admit that Birds of Prey was also a good, like, in the theater experience, because I was watching it on the small screen the other day, and it's like, oh, it loses a little something. But all that aside, it's a trade-off. It's the acceptable trade-off. And by the way, those communal experience movies don't come around that much.
Right,
we can pretty much target which ones they're going to be, and yes, they are probably going to be Marvel movies or Star Wars movies.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
but so we can target that when we don't. So we still can't use the excuse of every movie has to come out only in theaters to preserve the communal experience. Yeah. Like, no, it's because you want people to spend the $15 on popcorn.
Well, exactly. Right.
Well, yeah, it's more so because the movie ticket is like more money going towards the actual studio. That's why they want you to go to the movies, because they're hoping you're gonna buy popcorn.
Yeah,
that's where most movies make their money. I mean, movie theaters.
Dom, you've been a champion for streaming ever since this pandemic hit. So, this has been a bugaboo you've been having for quite some time. But speaking of streaming, we can't not talk about the penultimate episode of Loki before we close out. I completely flaked on the fact that Loki's only 6 episodes long, and I was reminded that Falcon Winter Soldier was also 6 episodes long. And my memory of Falcon Winter Soldier is that show took a fucking long time. And my brother was like, no, that was also 6 episodes. Like, really?
Time has been distorted in the pandemic. It's okay. It's hard to say how long 6 weeks feels like over the course of 2020 and 21.
So we are at episode 5 of Loki. There's only one left. I know last week you said that I'm the only person you guys have talked to that's not sold on this show yet.
Yeah.
And I think I'm just at a point where, like, I think everything's fine. I haven't fallen in love with anything that's come out since. I mean, Birds of Prey was probably the last thing that I watched and I absolutely fell in love with. Everything I've seen in the pandemic world, like on streaming or whatever. In the Heights was... I liked In the Heights quite a bit, but, I still like the Broadway show more. So nothing has, like, really taken me. So it's nothing against Loki necessarily, Britney. I know Britney's, like, protective of Tom Hiddleston.
I am.
I will say that I did quite enjoy episode 5.
Wait, say that again?
I did enjoy episode 5, though.
Really?
Would you surprise I enjoyed episode 5?
Yeah.
Because
No, I heard what you said the first time. I just wanted you to say it again. Yeah, tell us why.
Well, mainly for Frog Thor. Because the funny thing is, you guys joked about how awesome would it be to see a Frog Thor because there was the crocodile or alligator Loki at the end of the previous episode. And so that we got a 5-second Frog Thor cameo. And shout out to For All Nerds, they had the director of Loki on their show, which is coming out, I think, the same time this podcast comes out. And she confirmed that Chris Hemsworth had actually recorded dialogue as Frog Thor that ultimately got cut.
Oh, cool.
That's cool.
So, that alone, and the Thanos copter,
Yes, everyone's
and
talking
and
about
Richard
that.
Grant's classic Loki, like those three things,
Is it just him going, I am Thor, ribbit?
perhaps.
What?
Those three things are why I wish the entire series was more like this. I kind of was expecting wacky, crazy Marvel getting weird stuff for like the entirety of the series. So the fact that like I kind of got that in this one made me like this one more than like what we've been getting the previous 4 episodes.
Yeah, no, I think this episode is the strongest episode. It was so good. Richard E. Grant, what a class act. He is just so wonderful in everything I've seen him in.
I mean, I kind of low-key want to see a Loki movie set in his timeline.
Yes, yeah, I was thinking that too.
And how dope is it that it's the Disney Plus shows that give us the comic accurate costumes in every series, right? Like it's Wanda gave us like Wanda and Vision in their like comic book costumes, and we got in Falcon Winter Soldier, it's Sam had the like the accurate Captain America costume, but like, and then so far in all 3 Disney shows, we get to see what the actual comic book costume would look like, faithfully translated to live action.
I think for the shows, they really went like, let's just do it, let's go all out. And I feel like for people who are saying they prefer the shows much better than the movies, like it makes sense because it just feels like they're putting more like, let's just like wing it and do it. Let's like do this. But I feel like it really shows in Loki that they were just like, yeah, let's embrace this like total crazy weirdness that Marvel can be, because it feels like it. As a Doctor Who fan, as a Rick and Morty fan, as a Back to the Future fan, and then just someone who has enjoyed previous of what we've seen of Loki in the MCU, like this show is just like, that's my favorite. It's so good.
I think the other thing that I liked about episode 5 is that the biggest bug I've had with the Loki show was the whole notion of sacred timelines and everything. And the fact that they were saying, like, actually, there's no such thing as a sacred timeline. Like, there are still branching timelines and variants, we can't actually get rid of them. Like, it made me feel better that the time travel multiverse that they've established still, like, logically makes sense.
Yeah.
Because, like, whoever is behind the Timekeepers, whoever's behind Ravonna Ravenslayer is not necessarily, like, the ultimate power in the universe that's keeping a one timeline that, can only exist. It's really, there's one person trying to control everything, which is fine, which is great. I have a sneaking suspicion I know who it is. Yeah, I think it's another Loki.
Yeah,
I think that's
too.
the ultimate reveal, is that the people who think it's going to be Kang are like the people who think Mephisto was the villain in WandaVision. No, I'm just saying, it's like, I'm just setting, don't set yourself up for disappointment.
It's a trap.
Right? Like, yeah, that's what I mean, though, right? Like, a lot of the discussion around, the fact that Mephisto or the Fantastic Four never showed up in WandaVision soured a lot of people on WandaVision. And it's like, sometimes fan theories are just that. They're fan theories. You know what I'm saying? Like,
yeah, I mean, this is also fan theory, though, that it might be, Loki. But, you know what someone pointed out that cannot think about is that Mobius is actually a variant of Thor.
why?
Because he's like his brother?
Like, that's, I don't know, I guess that's what people have been saying. So I'm like, that'd be very interesting if that pans out to be, like, a thing. But, you know, I'm just
the
gonna
whole
say...
idea of Owen Wilson doing any version of Thor.
I'm
is
just gonna
that
say he's, like, the human version of Lightning McQueen.
Well, people were hoping that we would see, like, all the various Owen Wilsons show up, but so far, there's only one Mobius so far.
Have you seen the edit where they turned the car that he's driving into Lightning McQueen? When he's, like, in the car picking up Sylvie, they edited the car where it actually is, like, Lightning McQueen. I don't know.
Whoa.
That meme is so funny. I've been, like, every time I see it, I'd, like, laugh for, like, 10 minutes straight.
So, Dominic, where are you on Loki?
Oh, I'm a bit of a hater this week. I guess, like, I don't super like Loki. I mean, I don't not like it. I'm kind of in this everything's fine area with you. And, you know, reflecting on it, I haven't super liked any of these Marvel TV shows. I still have great hope for them. And part of this, like, it got me in a certain kind of mood. And I went back and rewatched Watchmen on HBO, and that was illuminating. That was like, oh, I kind of forgot about this show because we were in such a panic, and all the stuff it brought up kind of like seemed to really play out in real life in 2020 in an all too harsh way. But I do, and you know, we give DC a lot of shit, but there was one time they got it pretty right, and I think I think it was because I just want to say, like, this TV space where you can do, like, you know, more bold and more weirder things with the familiar comic book characters. I think for me, Watchmen is still the standard, even though it's uncomfortable to watch.
Yeah.
It's not as fun, and also it's definitely not under, you know, the Disney style guide how to do a series. So I don't know. I was just looking back on that, and, you know, I don't super like any of these Marvel series, but I'm still hoping.
No, I'm with you. I mean, I think DC's always been a stronger TV vehicle, right? Mm-hmm. Going back to even, like, Smallville or Lois and Clark, right? Like, part of the reason TV works for comic book stories is that it's the weekly check-in with the characters, right? Like, it's the same reason why Star Trek should always be a TV show and not a movie, right? Like, that whole episodic nature is the essence of the storytelling. And TV is able to kind of do that, where you have, like, whether it's a 13-episode limited series or a 22-episode, like, broadcast series, like, those things feel more like comic book stories than all the things you have to cram into a movie. And you know, we've discussed many times on this podcast, like, the Marvel approach to their movie making has been more in line with TV, which is why it's interesting that when they finally get to do real TV, because Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. and even the Netflix shows don't really count because they weren't spearheaded by the same creative team that is now. That's why these Disney shows are so important. It's like, oh, these are what the MCU shows would have been had the MCU really had full control over them, unlike Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. or the Netflix shows.
Yeah, I like Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., so... No,
but I'm just saying that Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. was never... Like, the first two or three seasons, it was more like Jed Whedon and Marissa Tancharoen kind of, like, saying, yeah, we're part... And there was more, you know, back and forth because Nick Fury shows up, the things that happen lead to what happens in Winter Soldier and vice versa. Winter Soldier says S.H.I.E.L.D. doesn't exist, so, like, oh, crap, we have to... And then by, like, season 4, they were, like, doing their own thing. You know what I'm saying? Like... Because there was a clear line of demarcation between the stuff on TV, because they were run by a whole different division than Kevin Feige was, like, very protective of the MCU content.
Well, I know they were always trying to work it where they could have it flow better, but they were just like, it's not ever gonna add up the way they wanted it to.
Right, because that's why they can only, like, sideways mention things. Yeah. They could never say, like, this... You know, even in the Netflix shows, they'll reference Iron Man or they'll reference Thor, but they can't actually say this is what's happening, you know, where it's happening in the timeline of the MCU. And speaking of Loki, like, Loki is the first time Roxxon is getting mentioned in MCU proper, which has been big deals in the Netflix and the Hulu shows, right? Like, Roxxon's all over Cloak and Dagger, it's all over Runaways and Daredevil, but now it's slowly, you know, trying. And when they brought in the Jarvis from Agent Carter into the Endgame, you know, it's like, okay, now they're starting to make little tiny bridges
I think because the Russos actually worked on Agent Carter, that's why we had Jarvis showing
And now that's a beautiful thing about the multiverse is that it doesn't matter. Like, you can say, like, this is at this point in Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. is when it diverged and created their own multiverse. Seasons 1 and 2 are still in the MCU, but, like, as long as they acknowledge... I think Kevin Feige still doesn't acknowledge Coulson is alive in the MCU.
No, they don't. He's dead.
So, anyway, but you were saying, Dominic, about TV?
No, I just think that's very instructive what you just said about because I especially about the Netflix shows, because I still think the Netflix shows, 3 out of 4 of them were really well written, or 4 out of 5 if you count Punisher. And I'm not as drawn in by the writing in the Disney Plus shows. I love the design. The people are working really hard on them, and I like the performances. I think there's some kind of there's like a fussiness about fitting to all the references and the fan Easter egg connections that I think is sort of in danger of overcoming the strong narrative ideas.
That's always been the rub, too, though, right? Like, I think why Daredevil and Jessica Jones and Luke Cage in particular were able to be successful is that they didn't have to be beholden to the continuity of the MCU.
Yeah.
Again, why I look to the multiverse as being a freeing thing for both Marvel and DC is that sometimes continuity can not only be a crutch, but it can also be an albatross around a creator's neck, right? Because my issue with a lot of things that happen in Black Widow, right? Like, well, continuity-wise, and I don't want to be that guy, right? I don't want to be the CinemaSins that's like nitpicking the plot holes or whatever.
Yeah,
and that's the point of like what I love about a multiverse is that, like, let them be free, right? Yeah. And to be fair, I think like with Kevin Feige, as great as he's been for the last 12 years, it's probably time to let Cheo Hodari Coker's vision of Luke Cage be free of like someone overseeing and saying, well, it's got to be, in order to fit into the Marvel continuity, you must blah 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 blah, right? Yeah. And I think that's hopefully what these next few movies and storylines
still very deeply rumored to be in No Way Home, Charlie Cox. So.
Right.
Yeah, I hope so. I sure hope
it's
so.
It's kind of cool, right? That maybe that leads to Vincent D'Onofrio being in a Spider-Man movie.
I think that was the only show that really like hit it the head on the nail that they're in the same universe more than any of the other shows, because they always referred to the incident, and they have like the pictures of. Then they're like, oh, it's the apartments are cheaper because of the incident, and so at least they exist in the same time in 2012. It could have diverged now, as we know, because of the stone being taken. So they could now be off in a different branch because of that. But I don't know.
So yeah, I mean, I think it's to me it's exciting that they can open. And I did want to mention one thing that you guys, when you talked about last week, Brittany, you mentioned that you think it would have made more sense to bring Andrew Garfield into Civil War and kill him off. Mm-hmm. The only thing I absolutely agree with you there. That what you could have tied, like, basically what you would say is that everything that happens in Amazing 1 and 2 happen. They just happen, off screen in the MCU. And it's kind of like me saying Christian Bale should have been in BVS, right? Mm-hmm. And to your point, I think the other thing that makes that make sense, if you killed off Andrew Garfield's Spider-Man in Civil War, you could still have the same movie be Spider-Man Homecoming, but you just have Miles Morales be the center. Because that movie should be a Miles Morales movie, because fucking Ned is Ganke anyway, right? Like, everything about Homecoming is very much like, this is a Miles Morales movie, because that's why there's so many, like, diverse characters in it. And it's just, like, Peter Parker's version of Spider-Man is very much a Miles Morales Spider-Man. So you could have still had the same Spider-Man movies. You wouldn't have to change anything about those movies. But you just have Miles Morales at the center. I think that would have been amazing if they did that.
Yeah, no, I think so too. So I love Andrew, as we know. I hope they're bringing him back. But yeah, I think that would have worked so much better. And then I feel like Civil War would have had the deeper tragedy in it that it needs, because that like series really does like weigh on people, because Cap doesn't make it out alive in that. And one of the main points is like the reason why they enacted the Superhero Act is actually because a whole bunch of little kindergartners got killed when teenage superheroes were having a fight on a so I feel like there wasn't that type of like emotionality behind Civil War as there should have been, and killing Andrew Garfield would have been it, at least for me. Not him, killing his Spider-Man, not actually Andrew Garfield, let me clarify.
No, I like how you're throwing Andrew Garfield out to be there to be like the tragedy provider.
Well, I love Andrew Garfield, so it would have broken my heart. So
Yeah, but I just think narratively it would have still worked, and it wouldn't have altered anything about the
absolutely
MCU. That's the beautiful thing. Because again, you know, when I watched Homecoming, I think a lot of people mention this with watching Homecoming. It's like, wow, this very much feels like it should have been a Miles Morales movie, and it could very well could have.
Yeah,
been.
it's an interesting hybrid.
So anyway, that's it for this week. What's nerd poppin'?
So I watched the part 2 of Fear Street without my friend. I'm so sorry if you're listening. I already seen it, but we're gonna watch it together anyways. Wow, part 2, so good. So that one takes place in 1978, and if you remember any of the Camp Nightwing stuff, actually from the Fear Street books, it kind of alludes to all of that. I like this one a lot better than part 1, and I rewatched part 1. So yeah, definitely part 2 so far is like, it's the movie, it's that girl. I highly recommend it, and I have so many theories about what's going on just because I remember reading like some of the other books, and I'm like, I hope they do the thing that I think they're gonna do, but we'll see.
So for those of you who have not subscribed to our YouTube channel, after listening to Brittany shout out Fear Street, I suggest you guys go subscribe to our YouTube channel so you can see Sophia's interview with Sadie Sink, the star of Fear Street 1978,
Yes.
talk about the movie.
She's
and
amazing.
you know her from Stranger Things. Definitely subscribe to our YouTube channel. We have several interviews with the cast of the Fear Street movies, so that's something you guys can do if you're listening to this podcast right now. Dom, what is nerd popping?
Oh, what's nerd popping for me is I'm trying to start my little kid nephew on action figures. So wait, if you'll indulge me for 1 second, can we have a brief crossover to your other podcast?
Should I play the self-conscious theme right now?
If you like, I want to ask you for
Yes.
a tip.
This is when I play the self-conscious theme since there's silence.
So I gave him some action figures.
Yes.
That were not Marvel Legends brand. But then I got these and I was like deciding whether or not to open them. I did get a Spider-Woman. She has removable sunglasses, which I think is cool. And then I got this Sunfire from Age of Apocalypse because he's one of the only Asian ones and he was available and I like Sunfire. So just the broad way, Keith, can I ask, like, do you open these or not? Do you open Marvel Legends for playing? Like,
That's why you
is
buy
there
2.
a chance that's right? Let's say 2 aren't available.
Okay.
In this case, there is 1 available. And by the way, these might be the ones that were actually opened and repackaged by some, reseller. I don't know if they usually have a background behind them or not.
Not necessarily. Usually,
necessarily.
if they're figure swapped, it's not the background that gets stolen. It's the Build-A-Figure piece. And the fact that you still have a lizard and
Build-A-Figure
I forget
piece.
who's the Age of Apocalypse Build-A-Figure. Perhaps it's Apocalypse. No, it doesn't look like Apocalypse. But no. Anyway, what I'm saying is when figures get swapped out, it's the
Right.
actual piece that gets swapped out. I am very much an opener. If you're giving this to your nephew, if your nephew should totally be an opener. I'm very much in the camp of open your toys. The only reason I don't open some of my toys is just I don't get around to opening them, or I have nowhere to display them
Because
I have
too many.
goddamn many. I'll move here. You can see these are all my Marvel. Not even all my Marvel Legends. These are just the Marvel Legends I have on display at the moment.
Wow.
But yeah.
Okay, because
Yeah,
I did
definitely
notice
open
there's some surge pricing models in, but like it's harder to find a Spider-Man.
Sure.
Than it is
Well,
to
I was
find,
going to say those
an
two
obscure X-Men.
figures that you're holding in your hand right now, the Spider-Woman and the Sunfire, are not like on pegs at the store right now. So those are. I don't know where you got them from. Did you get them at a comic book store or something, or?
I just searched around Walmart.
Oh, those were still on the pegs.
It was.
Wow.
Well, no, there was. No. I mean, online,
Oh.
and they're not selling through the store. They
Oh, right,
have
because you
independent
don't
sellers
go
or
out into
reselling
public
stuff.
because of the pandemic.
I have not gone into a big box store or a movie
Yeah.
theater yet. Okay, I'm very slow about this. But I was just wondering, like, in the case of someone like Spider-Woman, whose stock will rise when she shows up in whatever movie she's coming up, like, and then she'll be more valuable. Like, is there some strategery there?
So Marvel
of, like-
Legends are. I mean, yeah, because Hasbro's distribution model is so bad that you could probably get a pretty penny for selling some. Although, like you were able to buy those online at a decent price, right? Like you paid $20 for each
Yes,
of them,
like,
right?
Yes, they weren't like $100.
Right. Well,
they
yeah.
weren't even $50. Some Spider-Man were just
Right.
$50.
Well, yeah. So that's what I was saying. Like some figures, especially in the Marvel Legends space, are like they go for black market prices just because, again, distribution wise. I'll talk about G.I. Joe Classified, for example. Like, those figures are nominally $20 figures, but because the distribution is so fucking terrible, a Beachhead, which was a Target exclusive, or a Cobra Trooper or a Cobra Viper, were going for like $250 because
Yikes.
Right, because you just couldn't find them anywhere.
$250 Viper?
Yeah, you couldn't find it anywhere, and part of that was, again, the distribution model at Target was just terrible. Either a lot of scalpers, we call them, would set up like bots that as soon as the pre-order comes out, these AI orders all of the pre-orders, so that if you're just a regular collector, a regular fan, you try to buy it on the pre-order, you can't. Fortunately, Target cleaned their act up and just last week made all of their exclusive figures more easily available. So I was actually able to, I don't know if you saw in my social media, I was able to get a Beachhead finally.
I saw your Beachhead.
So yeah, so my advice to you is that it really just matters if you want to have your nephew play with the figure or not. Like, getting into this hobby to like invest or speculate isn't worth salt, honestly. Like,
sure,
because when the Spider-Woman movie comes out, if you still have that figure, I don't know that it's worth the hassle of holding on to it for the next however many years until we get a Spider-Woman movie.
Okay, well, I was just curious, and thank you for the tip and for this crossover moment between Shelf Conscious and Hard NOC Life. But what's third popping?
Speaking of Shelf Conscious, there was this awesome ad for the Snake Eyes movie produced by the Robot Chicken guys, stupid buddies.
Okay.
That
I was gonna ask who made that, because it's so like.
And it takes speaking of G.I. Joe Classified, it takes the G.I. Joe Classified figures, stop motion animates them, and basically does a play on the old, now PSAs, and it's the best ad. And it ends with the kids running into Snake Eyes, and he takes off his mask, and it's Henry Golding, and Henry Golding voices the figure and basically tells them about why he's talking and that they should go see the movie. And tickets are now finally available to buy, which, this is the reason I wanted to bring this up now. In the conversation we had earlier about should we see movies in theaters or not, Snake Eyes is a theater only movie.
Okay.
And
that's an interesting choice for me.
Right. And if only you lived in the DMV, Dominic, Jamie Noguchi and the fucking Do It guys and I are renting out a theater to watch Snake Eyes.
That is punk
So we're
rock.
doing that when the weekend it comes out. So
how much does it cost to rent out a whole theater?
Well, so the one we're renting out in Columbia, Maryland was $160 for a whole screen.
Like $160?
Yep.
What?
Huh.
And then
wait,
yeah,
what?
It was $160, and if you can get 20 people to come see it, that's $160 divided by 20. So it's like less than going to see it for real.
Wow.
What if you got 50 people to come see it? That's a steal.
But this is Columbia, Maryland, not San Francisco or
This is
Los
different
Angeles,
from,
right? Like, I'm sure it's not as cheap. This is one of the benefits of living
so messed
on
up.
the East Coast in a small market. Like,
I don't think they have anything for $160 in the Bay Area. Like, I don't think you can. I think the payphones are like $200.
So yeah,
not that they have payphones anymore. That was a data joke. Sorry.
Be on the lookout for. I don't know. Maybe we'll do a special pod from the screening. But I'm actually getting to see it in a rented out theater. I've already. There are people talking about the movie who've seen it. I'm already put it out there. If it doesn't follow the albatross of G.I. Joe continuity, I don't give a shit. Larry Hama gave it his seal of approval. He posted on social media that he thinks it's great. And again, talking about like the conspiracy theorists and fan theorists, like in the comment section of Larry's praise of the film, there's always like the people are like, this sounds like a hostage video or whatever. Like, fuck you. Larry Hama liked the movie. I talked to him personally on the Shelf Conscious podcast. He's got no qualms with the movie, with Asian Snake Eyes, with Snake Eyes pre-disfigurement. That's what the movie's about. Deal with it. If you're a real G.I. Joe fan, you wouldn't give a shit either. So that's all I got to say about that.
All right. Yeah, this is going to be quite a moment when the Snake Eyes movie comes out for you, Keith. We're going to you can only imagine what kind of religion you might get.
I will join the
not
Arashikage
get.
clan. the day after the movie comes out. Brittany, how can people find you on the internet?
You can find me on Twitter at Hi Brittany Monet. You can also check out at Naomi Podcast, which is going to be the new podcast I'm doing for DC TV Podcast. That's all I have, really.
Awesome. Dominic?
I'm at Dama on Instagram and Twitter, and please do follow me on Twitter because I have a not a viable number of followers, but I am a person, so I'd really appreciate it.
You can follow me on Twitter at @TheRealChow, _real_Chow, and follow me on Instagram at RealKeithChow. Follow the Nerds of Color at the Nerds of Color on all your social media platforms, and subscribe to the podcast at hardknockmedia.com, where you can get us on Apple, Google, Spotify, Stitcher, everywhere you get podcasts. Give us a rating and a review if you do. As I mentioned earlier, subscribe to our YouTube channel, smash that subscribe button, hit that like button, hit those notification bells, do all the things. Speaking of Self-Conscious, that's one of the other podcasts I have in the Hard Knock Media podcast family. Just interviewed Tiffany Smith, the Geek Queen, who's going to be playing Lieutenant Andra on Masters of the Universe Revelation, the animated reboot / spiritual sequel to the old 80s Filmation show. Show run by Kevin Smith. So check that out on the podcast feeds as well as on our YouTube channels. And until next time.
I think spiritual sequel should be its own genre on Netflix. I think that's a good category.
Watch it on your
See ya.
screen, hit play, so check this. This is the hard knock life, but not the chicken kind, more like the people.